Welcome to the Dibley Diaries for this week. This week we're going to be thinking about the Matthew version of the feeding of the 5,000, which is quite different to the John version, and we'll come on to that in Thought for the Week. But in the Rural Challenge I was thinking particularly about an Archdeacon visitation service which I went to when I was very early on in my ministry, where the Archdeacon used this story, this miracle, to say to all our rural churches, you have everything that you need. You have everything that you need. And I was thinking, I don't think we do. I really don't think I have everything that I need to do this job, to be the church. There was a big emphasis at the time, centrally, from the main diocese, that we should be exactly like big city churches. That we should have a structure like them, we should be like them in lots and lots of different ways. There was a huge pressure to conform to that. We hadn't moved into that phase where actually the rural church, the very small churches, are perfectly formed clementines, not inadequately grown oranges. But it is difficult. It's really difficult. I kind of thought I didn't have everything I need. At the time, I really could have done with a guitarist, but over the years I've needed many other things. I could have done with some treasurers, some church wardens, some people to lead services who were able to move from place to place. And that was a challenge for me, and I think it's a challenge for all of us. I do not know how to solve this problem. I would really like for us to be able to deploy people from one church community to another. A treasurer here, a church warden there, a licensed lay minister somewhere, even a few people who might move from one place to another to encourage churches which are struggling at a particular time. But also, I guess I have seen over the years that when times have been troubled, we have had what we needed. We just didn't know it at the time. And often these have come, people have come from our wider village communities, and we didn't know. So this is something which we still struggle with. How do we have what we need, the loaves and fishes as it were, to make our little tiny church communities thrive and flourish? Thought for the week this week is based on the Matthew version of the feeding of the 5,000. It's a bit different to the John version of the feeding of the 5,000. It doesn't have the little boy and his packed lunch aspects of it. It has some other slightly different things as well. But we begin with Jesus wanting to be by himself. He wants to go by himself to process the grief that he has over losing his cousin John. He wants to be by himself. He wants to mourn his cousin who's been killed by Herod. That might seem fair enough, but thousands of people want to be with Jesus. Thousands of people come to be with Jesus. They hear he's there, they want to be with him, and they travel to be with him. And then we hear that he cures some of the sick who are brought to him, and then it gets towards evening. So in the Matthew it says it's coming towards the evening, and the disciples are like, let's send these people away to the villages to get food for themselves. And that's when Jesus is like, well, no, we can do this. What have you got? And the disciples are like, well, we've only got 5 loaves and 2 fish. We've only got 5 loaves and 2 fish. And then Jesus feeds everybody. I've been thinking a bit over the past few weeks about wise choices, and I was thinking about this in terms of our leavers service as well. I'm not always in my rural parish. Occasionally I get to travel to London, to the big city, and recently when I was in London I was on the Elizabeth line and I was eavesdropping on a conversation. I mean, not kind of just, it was happening across from me, so there was nothing I could do. I could just hear this conversation. And there was a lady on the phone to somebody, and she said, "Are you sure this is a wise choice?" And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then there was some bit where she was listening to somebody, and then she said, are you really sure this is a wise choice? And then there was more conversation from the other person, which I couldn't hear, and then she said, are you really sure this is a good choice? By that point, I realised that this woman did not think whatever this other person was making was a good choice. But then I had to get off the train, so I didn't know what was going to happen towards the end of this conversation. I've been thinking about wise choices or foolish choices in terms of this story, because all these people have gone to find Jesus and they've taken no food with them. They may well, some of them almost certainly will, have given up a day's work in order to go to Jesus. So maybe they didn't have a choice that they hadn't taken any food. Maybe they didn't have any money to buy any food because they'd travelled. And in the Matthew version it says, it's getting towards evening, and I'm thinking, are they going to sleep in the fields? Are they just going to sleep where they are overnight, because it's already evening? And if they were going to be able to travel back home, then that's what the disciples would have said that they should have done, instead of going back to the villages to buy food. It seems to me that ostensibly these people who've gone to see Jesus have not made a wise choice. Are you really sure that this is a wise choice, that they've gone to see Jesus? Arguably, for those people who were sick, who were cured, then we might appreciate, yes, that's a wise choice that they've made. But then there are all these hungry people, and what's Jesus going to do? I mean, they've got 5 loaves and 2 fish. There's thousands of people. There's 5,000 men plus women and children. They haven't taken food to eat. Maybe they weren't being very wise about going to be with Jesus. When we've been talking about making wise choices, making good choices with our Leavers services this year, we've been wanting to emphasise that, wise choices are a really good thing. But even if you make an unwise choice, then God still loves you. God still is compassionate to you. And I've been pondering that in connection with this story, because I think this illustrates this perfectly, that actually all these people who've gone to see Jesus with no food and no shelter sorted out, nothing was there for them. There was no provision for them. Arguably, they had not made the wise choice. But Jesus still had compassion on them. Jesus still had compassion on them, whether they'd made a wise choice or not. Jesus wanted to have compassion on them, to show mercy to them. And I think that's important for us to remember, that sometimes we may make a wise choice, sometimes we may make an unwise choice. But God still loves us, and God still wants to be compassionate to us. That compassion may not always take the form of a fish sandwich, but for many thousand people that day, it did. The Dibley moment of the week this week is something which happened in one of our primary school Leavers services, which really intrigued me. So they'd been on the school residential, they were wanting to talk about it in their Leavers talk, and there were 3 of them who talked about the same thing that had happened. So one said that the head teacher had gone into their room and tripped over a suitcase. One of the others said that the head teacher had gone into the room and kicked the suitcase, and the other one said, the head teacher came in and tripped on the suitcase. Now, I thought to myself, that is a really good illustration of the differences between the Gospels. And I think that's why I've been thinking about it this week, because the story in Matthew is different from the story in John. However, I didn't stop the Leavers service to go, by the way, you've just illustrated this really interesting theological point, that 12 weeks after the event, the way you recount the story is slightly different. Because, we had other things to do in the Leavers service. Well, that's it for the Dibley Diaries for this week. I pray that you and your village, however large or small, have a really blessed week where you can know that God's compassion is for you, whether you make wise or unwise choices. And I also pray that nobody trips over a suitcase.